AM 630.
It's 7:07 on WMAL. It's where Washington comes to talk, and you're listening to Mornings on the Mall with Brian and Larry. Coming up later this morning at 8:05, Representative Andy Harris of Maryland will join us. We're going to get him to comment, of course, on the war that he's on the ongoing war between he and the District of Columbia government over the decriminalization of marijuana. But, of course, since we have a congressman here, we'll have him comment also on the growing tensions in the Middle East as well as the downing of the Malaysian airliner in Ukraine. Then at 8:35, Brett Baer of Fox News Channel will be our guest. It's a loaded morning for you. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Brian Wilson.
Joining us now on the line is Bill Kristol, the editor of the Weekly Standard. Good morning to you, Bill.
Hey, Brian. How are you?
We're doing very well. Listen, I want to talk about the two big issues of the day, and let's start with what's going on in Israel this morning. Some suggestions that the Israelis are going to widen what they have called an incursion into the Palestinian areas of Gaza. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, they've gone in because they have to go in to get these tunnels destroyed, they were using the tunnels, Hamas, to launch what would have potentially been a massive terrorist attack on an Israeli kibbutz. And it's important to remember this kibbutz is in Israel. You know, they're not attacking. This is not about getting back Palestinian land that was unjustly taken or whatever rhetoric they have. They want to kill Israelis. They want to kill Jews. You can't let a terrorist group have tunnels that spread under their border. Hamas seems, unfortunately, to have done a pretty good job of building these tunnels. So the Israeli military is in there destroying them and trying to be pretty careful, it looks like, about not killing civilians.
And yet it comes at a time when I guess you'd have to say the relationship between the United States government and the government of Israel, well, I guess you would call it strained?
Well, I think the Obama administration has a strained relation with Israel, but I would say the United States government as a whole, the United States Congress, the United States people, the American people, have an awfully good relation with Israel. That's what strikes me. I'm down here in Arkansas, actually, giving a talk tonight, and I had a dinner last night with some various people who came to put together to let me know what's going on down here outside the Beltway, pretty far outside the Beltway, actually. And I was struck how much they're concerned for Israel, their sense that the Israelis are living under rocket attacks, their sense that Israel's a fellow democracy, another country with Western values, is being attacked by terrorists. These were not Jews, really, at all, actually. You know, they were people Americans who think that we should be supporting Israel in every way. And I'm struck that Canada is putting out statements supporting Israel, Australia. The U.S. government's been pretty quiet, which is good, the Obama administration. But it would be nice if they just realized that you can't tolerate heavy rocket attacks and then infiltration through tunnels to kill your citizens.
Yet the moral equivalence seems to continue at least from our State Department, and not a whole lot of anything from the White House. But Bill Kristol, it seems to me, and listen, you know what's going on the ground there a lot better than I do. I'm just an American observing from this side, and I know that you've been over there a lot, and you have good relationships with the Israeli government. It seems to me that Israel can never rest and never really be at peace until that government in Gaza is changed. As long as Hamas is running the things in Gaza Strip, will Israel ever be able to let their guard down?
No, and you know what? Israel won't be able to let its guard down even if, Hamas went away tomorrow and other governments came in.
Well, yeah, forget about let your guard down, but yeah.
No, you're right. The Hamas government is a huge problem in Gaza. But I think Israel figures for now that that's a pretty big task to remove it, that you'd have to replace it with something else. And they're willing to tolerate a Hamas government there if they don't use tunnels to have terrorist attacks in Israel and don't rocket Israel. It's unfortunate for the people of Gaza, but there's a limit to what Israel can do about that. The truth is, until very recently, it had been quite peaceful, certainly in the West Bank and even on the Gaza border. But Hamas, I think, partly inspired by jihadist successes elsewhere in the Middle East, partly out of a desire to, of course, provoke a war and reestablish their reputation, has gone, and partly because they exist to kill Israelis. I mean, that is the point of Hamas, to destroy the state of Israel. They decided to launch this effort, and Israel obviously has to prevent Hamas from doing this, at least for a while in the future. But you're right, there's no one big solution to this.
Moving on to the other major story yesterday, the downing of the Malaysian airliner over Ukraine. Vladimir Putin says that Ukraine is responsible. The Ukrainian president said that the Russians are responsible, and it was an act of terror. Does America have any role in this at all?
Yeah, when 24 Americans are killed, America has a role. And we have not done what we could have done to help Ukraine suppress these Russian separatists. We've had the attitude that, well, they've shot down, maybe 9 or 10, I think, Ukrainian planes, but that somehow wouldn't affect us. And I think it's a good reminder. There's a lot of questions about exactly what to do, which arms to provide the Ukrainians, how much help we could provide. But this is a reminder that we can step aside from these conflicts and think, well, they're killing each other, it doesn't matter to us. But often it does come home to matter to us, and this is a case of that. And I think it's, a reminder, therefore, that you just can't turn your back on conflicts like this in the world. And Putin is the aggressor. No question that the Russian government provided these very advanced weapons to Russian separatists, Russian-backed separatists, who, it's pretty clear, used them against the civilian airliner. So I don't think there's much moral ambiguity here. Vladimir Putin, I think, indirectly at least, has the blood of these Americans on his hands.
All right, so tell me what you think about how our president has handled this. I mean, other than mumbling a few words at an event yesterday about how there may have been a terrible tragedy. I think that's an exact quote. There may have been a terrible tragedy. He hasn't really said much about this. Why do you think that is, and should he come out strongly?
Well, and he went through, I guess, a fundraiser in New York last night, didn't he? So that was
that was the silver lining of yesterday's events.
I mean, it is. I hate to say. I mean, it is unbelievable. You know, the fundraisers always come first for the Obama White House. Let's see what he does today and tomorrow. He deserves time to collect all the information. But yes, I think I talked again to to people down here in Arkansas. Some of whom, they're not that political. They were still watching the news. A lot of them were watching. I was on a plane, but they were watching yesterday afternoon when people were saying the president's about to make a statement. And they were disappointed as Americans. I mean, really, that's one paragraph. It doesn't say anything. That has no moral force. That was really not a great day for an American president just in his role as leader of the American people when Americans have been killed. Now, we'll see what he does today and tomorrow, and hopefully he'll both say more and begin to get more serious about not letting a situation develop in Europe where an American's flying out peacefully on a jetliner from Amsterdam get killed.
Well, it would appear that we're going to have pretty good intelligence on this because we were watching that area closely anyway via satellite. We were able to detect within short order, according to many sources in the U.S. government, that it was indeed a missile attack. One presumes that they can then triangulate where that missile came from in relatively short order. So we should have fairly definitive information here, it would seem.
Yeah, I think so, and there are all the statements, some of which they've tried to now erase, on Twitter and elsewhere, where it does seem that Russian-backed separatists or Russian separatists, there's not much of a distinction, took credit for this. So I don't think it's going to be that complicated to figure out who's responsible. Did Putin order it? No. Did he provide the weapons that made this possible, encourage the behavior that led to this? Absolutely. So let's not kid ourselves. We have a situation where the president of a major nation, Putin, for the sake of his territorial ambitions in invading another sovereign nation, incidentally a sovereign nation that we said would help protect its borders 20 years ago when they gave up nuclear weapons, Ukraine, for the sake of humiliating and invading that nation, seizing territory in that nation, he provided those weapons. They shot down Ukrainian planes, and now they've shot down a civilian airliner with Americans abroad. It's not very confusing, I think, about who's responsible for these American deaths.
Bill Kristol, really fast, as these international events unfold, Hillary Clinton is a presumptive nominee. I think a lot of people are assuming, or at least is going to be in the mix for 2016, and she's the former Secretary of State. Obviously, people are going to take for granted that she has a certain level of experience in foreign relations. I saw that Marco Rubio immediately took to the floor yesterday and said that any civilian deaths in the Gaza Strip were 100% Hamas's fault. Huge supporter of Israel. What other potential candidates for the Republicans are you seeing emerging with some pretty good foreign relations and national security credentials?
There's a pretty interesting debate going on in the Republican Party. Rand Paul has his views. Rick Perry challenged them recently. Marco Rubio's challenged them. I think it's going to be a big issue in the Republican primaries, not an ideological issue entirely, but also just who has the knowledge, the character, the strength to deal with this incredibly dangerous world that, unfortunately, President Obama is going to leave his successor. And what's scary, it really is that we have 2 more years of President Obama. I hope, as an American, I hope that he pivots and gets serious about dealing with the chaos that is spreading around the world.
Thank you, Bill Kristol. It's always good to have you.
Thanks.
It is 7:16 WMAL.